Hey everybody, this is Perch, and this is a video that I thought about doing with some charts and some graphs. I talked to a few people over the weekend, talked to people in the previous week about kind of this frustration that often crops up in comics, which feels like a big denial of reality or a big dancing around the obvious. And this is where I wish that everybody would just stop playing and at least for a moment, for like an hour. It's like the Purge, only instead of just murdering people for 24 hours. Is it 24 hours or overnight? I don't know. I don't quite know my Purge rules, but everybody could just okay, let's just stop all of the various kind of trolling and insults and baiting and all the rest, and just put facts on the table for a brief period of time. Then we can go back to it. Because there's some really obvious things that no matter how you cut it, it's hard to get around it. Now, I'll give you an example of this. One of the perpetual arguments in comics for the last year that you would have had to be living under a rock to miss is this refrain of comics is doing amazing. It's doing great. Higher numbers than have ever been gotten before. That side arguing with the comics is failing, about to die, things are about to explode, everything else. When I've waded into this topic, I get the fence sitter label posted on me by a bunch of morons who can't really understand what is going on. But here is the reality, and it's simple. How, and this is my question, how can you claim that comics is doing great, it's doing wonderfully, when on a regular basis you see creators, writers and artists and others having to do GoFundMes for things like I need dental work done or I can't make rent this month? It's been, the Mags Visaggio story is a bewildering story, because if you go back in time, I hate, by the way, this phrase, the GOAT. A lot of people throw out the GOAT. I don't know. Maybe I hate it because I lived up here, or live about to be lived in Seattle, and we hate the Patriots because screw Tom Brady, and so Brady was often described as the GOAT, and it would irritate everybody in Seattle for no apparent reason. Now the reality is the Patriots beat the Seahawks in the Super Bowl for a super stupid. Like, you got Marshawn Lynch right there. You hand him the ball, you idiot. What are you doing? You got one of the best. But anyway, I digress. Mags was referred to as the GOAT by a ton of creators. I thought I was imagining this because right now Vita Ayala is referred to as the GOAT, and you see this, the people are like and it always bugs me because this person emerged on the scene 2-3 years ago, in a real meaningful way. And you're greatest of all time. I mean, I feel like that term should have more meaning than that. But of course, people don't really mean it like they sound. But if you go back in time 5 years ago, Mags was referred to as the GOAT. Today, Mags is basically running a GoFundMe to kind of make ends meet. So the question people have, and look, I'm sorry, no matter where you sit on the comic spectrum here, you can't deny basic common sense and reality. And most people have hard time putting it together, the idea of, hey, the comics business is amazing. Everything is great. You see these tweets come out from people like, the business is growing. Where are all those people now saying that comics is dying? When simultaneously, at the exact same moment, you've got comic creators who were referred to as the GOAT, the greatest of all time, can't miss, wonderful. Mags would have her work retweeted by Bendis and Snyder and the top people in comics. And yet 5 years later, the person is having to ask for money. And it's not like a Mags only problem. This is a lot of people in comics we hear. You hear a lot of complaining. You see the need, people are saying we need to get a union in place because things are so bad. The conditions are so terrible. So if you're reading those, if you're reading conditions are bad, we need a union. There's no transparency. We've got terrible content getting out in the world. We got the Warren Ellis situation. We got people out there love bombing creators all over the place. We got people having to run GoFundMes in order to get their teeth worked on, to pay rent. What What in the world? You can't have that world and living side by side with the comic industry is as good as it's ever been. You can't. Those two don't go together. At least not without a lot of caveats, a lot of disclaimers, and the stuff that makes people crazy people call you a fence sitter of. My opinion is, I think the comic industry is generating quite a bit of money right now. I think that industry is a lot of stuff from outside sources, from YA, from Scholastic, from manga. But I don't think Marvel and DC are hurting. And I know this runs contrary to the other group. I don't think they're hurting right now, because I think that the people on the top have some pretty damn good salaries, some pretty good checks. If you walk into a Target or a Walmart or a place like that, you will see Marvel and DC content everywhere. Not comics, but those brands are being milked. Like there's happiness when you look at Jim Lee and Daniel Cherry doing interviews. The two are smiling, completely out of touch with what's going on inside their own company. I mean, I apologize again for sounding like a broken record, but when Daniel Cherry gets up there and says, yeah, we're putting out fewer books so we can focus on quality, where at the exact same moment, you go and you just count what they're offering at Diamond, and it's like, oh no, it's actually more books than you've produced in the last 15 years is what you're doing right now. More. It's the exact opposite of what you said. Joe Quesada, Sana Amanat, what even CB Cebulski, like, what are they doing right now? I think they're having a good time. I think they're living their best life. They're doing their life's pretty good. I think they're happy. Of course they're happy. I think they're paid well. They've got good executive salaries. Things aren't that difficult. They're getting stuff out. I mean, they're pumping books, and they're going to the movie premieres for these MCU films. From their perspective, life's going great. But meanwhile, the creators, the people at the bottom, you've got editors making, $35,000-$40,000 a year in New York. You've got a bunch of people having to bunk up together when they go to cons, or when even just in their normal life. There's an alarming amount of people in comics who share apartments, not because they're best buds and they're living like a Three's Company kind of life. That's an old reference right there. But because they have to, because that's the only way they can afford it. You see these threads from people, again, on Twitter, creators, not customers, not people complaining, but creators talking about how, if you want to be rich, you don't go into comics, or if you're going to go into comics, make sure you have a side job that actually pays you what you need. Make sure that you're married, or you have a spouse or a family member or something who's the breadwinner of the family. How can you say that while simultaneously saying that everything is going great? The comic industry is doing amazing. You can't. It's an intractable fact. And I don't say this to go, yeah, everything is shit, because clearly everything isn't shit if old Jim Lee, Daniel Cherry, Joe Quesada, others are, running around with 7-figure salaries having a good time. Clearly, life's not bad for them. But this is where things are really screwed up. Again, this idea that you've got a creator, Mags, greatest of all time, 5 years ago, now having to beg online. I've seen this. What happens? Is it cynical to say that, Vita, who's currently now everybody's saying the greatest of all time, that Vita is going to wind up in the same place in a few years? I don't think that's cynical. I think that's like, look, when you look at the information that's in front of you, it feels like this is where it's going to go. Is it a bold, wacky prediction to say that some of the current writers who are in comics are going to be either out of comics or on the fringe within, less than 10 years? No, if you just pay attention, that's how it's worked for a long time. Is that a healthy industry? I don't think it's a middle ground position to say, well, clearly comics is spinning off a bunch of money because some of these guys are living really well, and the stuff's getting merchandised and tossed around and everything else. But clearly, it's not all perfect, or even close to it, when you see this stuff going on. And when I see these arguments and frankly, I'll go to the conspiracy level kind of feeling of it. It feels like the people at the very top, the super rich people that are doing quite well, love this battle that happens at the lower levels. I think if you're if you're a Joe Quesada, maybe you love the fact that, a Mags or a Vita or a Danny or somebody like that, Stephanie Phillips, maybe you love the fact that they're in there arguing and defending the comic business to a bunch of detractors. You don't have to get your hands dirty. They're not making any money off of it. You just get to see the small people squabble. Is that what this is like? That's what kind of this all feels like. It feels like there's a bunch of noise at the bottom that is just kind of an entertaining sideshow. I'm picturing like the kind of the Colosseum and the emperor sitting up there watching the little people all fight and just having a good time. That's how comics feels to me. I hate the fact that it feels that way to me. It feels like this is a big distraction fight, bluntly. I don't think you can say that the comic industry is in great shape when you've got people begging for money, when you have union demands that are things like, we want basic transparency into a livable wage, when you have editors who are basically getting let go so that you could have the tiniest staff imaginable at a tiny amount of money being paid. Forget all the rest of this stuff. I think the trap with this entire argument is you quickly get into the subjective. You say, well, this comic is not good quality, or this comic is woke, or whatever it happens to be. That's a subjective, unfortunately, call. I think that there's some tangible, hard metrics we can look at to say, yeah, things are not great. There's no risk of the comic industry blowing up into a crater tomorrow when you see the amount of money that is spinning off of it. But can we stop pretending? It's great. My poor brain can't juggle between this is the best it's ever been. Life is great. Screw you haters. The comic industry is doing really healthy. P.S. I can't afford Netflix this month. Would you please donate money to my GoFundMe? Those two don't go together. Come on. Is it just that nobody wants to admit any weakness whatsoever because they don't want to lose face? Or what is going on here exactly? You can't have it both ways. That's my challenge here. Is it feels like we want to, it's bizarre. When I meet people, when I get a text message, when I chat with people online about all this stuff, I get usually inside the business, creators, editors, when I talk to them, I would say 90% of the time it's a negative story. They're overworked, they're underpaid, they weren't paid for something, they were supposed to get a royalty but didn't, they were cheated, they asked for more money about something and they didn't get it. It's all bad news. Always. And I think any reasonable person would look at that and go, things aren't going great. But as soon as you say things aren't going great, then suddenly you're part of the anti-comics mafia. Come on. Can't we, how is any of this stuff supposed to be fixed if we're not willing to say, hey, you know what? Maybe things aren't perfect. That doesn't mean we hate ourselves. It doesn't mean we hate comics. It simply means, can we stop denying basic reality here? I've said it before, and these videos always get turned down. I go on to, people send me links to Kiwi farms and places, and people just lose their minds over it for no apparent reason. I don't get it. But I'll say it again, and YouTube's about to get rid of all the dislike comments, so yeah, nobody will care. I don't care. The entire topic of SJW content, woke content, all the rest of that kind of stuff, it's interesting to talk about. You can do videos, you can do streams, you can talk about the changing ideologies in comics, you can do all those things, and that's fine. And you can make the argument, by the way, that, hey, some of these ideologies mean you're targeting a niche audience, and so you're shrinking your audience. I think that's a fine argument to go through as well. But honestly, I think it's a little bit of too complicated of an argument. You got we can deal with simpler facts. We've got creators who can't afford to live without donations outside of their business. Okay, forget any of the content in the comic. That seems like a problem. If you want to make the argument that, hey, if the content in the comic just all changed and it was appealed to a broader audience and there'd be more money in it, you're probably right. That's a nice future-looking prediction. But right now, there's a problem. I don't need to go into, is turning John Kent bisexual ruining the comic industry? The thing that's ruining the comic industry, if it's being ruined, is that the majority of the creators are living like paupers, having to beg for money. The editors are underpaid a basic average wage. And the people at the very top are doing great and seem entirely disconnected from what's going on in comics. And that's the point, again, I don't see brought up a much. The people on the top are doing well. They're paid well. And they seem to have zero clue about what's actually going on in the books that they're producing. I don't know. Seems like a problem. But I am exhausted of the everything is going great. P.S. I need to eat this month. Come on. If those words are coming out of your mouth, something is wrong. Right? Can we just, again, take for 24 hours, can we just put all the other bullshit away and just deal with facts? Who knew? Thanks for listening.